So, hi guys, my name is Brijesh. I'm in grade 12 and I'm part of Team 4939 and I've been doing FRC for 4 years now.
Hi everyone, my name is Mehak and I'm in grade 10, so this is my second year part of 4939 and I work on the outreach side as well as mechanical.
Okay, so Team 4939 started doing FLL as part of their outreach, and we started about a year ago, and we mentor multiple FLL teams, and we're looking into starting FLL junior teams this year.
Okay, so in this workshop, you guys are going to get a deeper understanding of how to start FLL teams or FLL junior teams in your community, what steps are required, and how to approach it in like build season and afterwards during like off season.
Okay, so a little bit more about what is FLL. FLL stands for First Lego League, and it's a competition for grades 4 to 8, and it's where students build a robot to compete in a competition where they have different missions, and the robot has to complete different missions, but they also have a different project aspect of it, where they research a real-life problem and come up with a solution for it. So there are 3 aspects of the competition that the students will be judged on when they go to the competition. So the first one is robot design. And so robot design is where you get a mat, right, in August, and there's multiple missions on it, and the kids will build a Lego robot out of the Mindstorms kits, and they'll have to program and build their robot to complete different missions. And there's also a different aspect that they're judged on. When they go into the competition, they'll have a presentation to do in front of judges about their robot, where they describe how they built their robot, like what sensors they used and like why they did it this way instead of this way. Then they have the project aspect of it, where they'll research a problem or a challenge. A challenge will be released when the game is released, and they'll have to come up with a problem for it, and then research more about this topic, and then come up with a solution, and possibly create a model. And they'll be judged on their presentation skills and their research skills too. And then the last part is core values, and this is often the most important part, and this is where the kids will go into a presentation room and the judges will give them an activity, and they'll have to work together as a team and collaborate, and the judges will be assessing them on this. And so this is often one of the most important parts, as in order to run your FLL team well, we recommend that you focus a lot on core values, especially when initially starting out your team.
Okay, and so now on to the impacts of FLL. FLL has many impacts, both on the team who's mentoring students as well as the students who are participating. So for example, for our team, the reason why we started mentoring FLL teams was because it was a great way for us to give back to the community. Since we already have knowledge about robotics and FRC, that was a good way to teach younger students about STEM and promote the message of STEM. And B, it's a great way for your team to get started off with applying for the Chairman's Award. So by mentoring FLL teams, it kind of helps you start like showing off STEM in your community, and that's a good way to start off. And for the students, FLL is a great way for them to understand what STEM is and apply the knowledge that they learn in their classrooms into a real working model of a robot. So every year when FLL releases a theme, they can, for example, I think in 2018 the theme was water. So in the grade 4 curriculum, water, they learn about water cycles, things like that. So using that knowledge that they have, they can apply it into their research project and their actual robot.
Okay, so now we'll get into the initial steps you should take before you actually go and approach a community or a library or a school. So the first thing is to understand what FLL is all about. And this may be like fairly obvious, but it's very important that all the members that you'll be working with from your team understand what is required, the time commitment, and all the tasks the kids will need to accomplish. The second step would be to find passionate members on your team who are willing to spend a lot of time working with little kids and sharing their knowledge of STEM. So the students can be from any subgroup of your team. You don't need to restrict it, but we do recommend that you have someone from the business aspect of your team, as well as people who have had previous experience with FLL. And one thing to stress to these students is that this FLL does require a lot of time commitment, especially when starting a first-year team, as they're going to need a lot of assistance because they have no clue what they're doing. There's kids that have like never been introduced to robotics before, so this is very important. There's also the option of not mentoring them and just starting the team, but we do highly recommend, at least for a first year team, that you do mentor them and help them build a steady pace where they can adapt to it and do it again for multiple years.
Okay, and step 3 would be finding a location. So depending on where you wish to mentor an FLL team, whether it be in a school or in your community, there's multiple ways to approach this. So you can start off by what we do is we choose to talk to middle schools around our area and see if they're interested in either a robotics program or implementing it in after-school programs. Or if you have a library nearby that has any robotics programs or anything that's happening or any workshops, you can ask them if they'd be interested in running a robotics program, then transition that into FLL later on. But your process is going to differ based on if you choose a community team or a school team.
Okay, so the next step we recommend is you work out your finances, as this does become very crucial in starting an FLL team, as if you go to a school, they need to know that there is a lot of money and a lot of costs that need to be covered in order to start this team in the first place. So we recommend that you approach this by creating a budget plan. So if you go to the next slide. So this is a list of different things that we've included in our, this is a sample budget plan. These are all the tasks, all the materials and all the things you need to account for, and these are rough estimates of prices. And usually the cost for an FLL team starting out comes around to be $1,400 or $1,500. And what your team should look into doing is setting aside finances to possibly offer the team that you're starting, and you need to create a plan for what you'll be offering them, if you're going to be asking the students to pay anything, or is the school going to be supporting you, or the library going to be supporting you. And it's also important to include different assets into this budget plan, which would include, if the school already has FLL kits, then you don't need to account for those, and that is a big part of it. So what we did when we started our first FLL team was we went to a school that already had FLL kits that they weren't using for an FLL competition. So we approached them and we were like, oh, this is what FLL is all about. So then they could use those kits instead of just having them at their school where they use it for different curriculums. You can also include different other assets, such as teams that are willing to donate FLL kits to you, which is also very important. But this budget plan should be shared with the adult mentors and the lead mentors that you're going to be working with. So make sure to be very thorough and account for all the costs that need to be covered. And while calculating the costs, if you are not able to financially support them, or they're not able to offer enough finance or costs to cover this, you might want to consider making a small proposal for sponsors and tell them about what FLL is, why it's beneficial for the community, and send it out to sponsors that would be willing to help out your team.
Okay, and so now on to a rough outline that includes deadlines, things like that are assigned. So what our team does is that it's really important to have an outline where you have deadlines that are assigned by first league organizers that you can include onto there, and then share it with the mentors, the adult mentors for the FLL team. And a sample rough outline would be going through each month and determining what you need to do for every month. But you have to keep in mind that every month you may be only meeting once a week, or even once every 2 weeks. So it's really important for you to be productive and follow these deadlines and keep them realistic. Don't have that you're ordering parts in a day and the next day you're going to get them, because that's not realistic. But keep in mind what your team has, even if you have competitions coming up. So keep that stuff in mind while you're making your deadlines. So I'm going to quickly go through every month, but we're going to go more into detail. So in March, what you would try to do is start contacting schools, and once you get schools approved, and start ordering parts of what you need. Whether it be EV3s or any Lego parts, you can start ordering them, or even if the school has them, that's even better. And then in April, this is when you start having your info meeting and have a team meeting. So in the beginning, we'd recommend that you have an information meeting about what FLL is. If you're having this in the community, or even in schools, where students and their parents can come in and understand what their child is getting interested in. It's really important to not just showcase FLL as building a robot or building a Lego robot. You also have to include that there is a project aspect, so you get students with a variety of interests, not just students who are only solely going to focus on the robot aspect. In May, this is when registration opens. So registration gets open around May 27th of 2018 this year. So this is when you start holding mini lessons. So different things like gear ratios and different mechanisms that the students can start understanding. It's a great way for them to be introduced to robotics. If some of them haven't done FLL or were introduced to STEM prior to this, it's a great way for them to get hands-on experience. And for students who are interested in project aspect, have them look at previous years and make them show like mini presentations so they can kind of prepare for that as well. In August, if you're doing a school team, this is when everyone's on like holidays or summer break. So tell the kids prior that the game is going to get released so they can look into it. If possible, if you can have meetings with them as well in the summer, that's also really beneficial. This is when the game gets released and the students can look into missions and what they're interested in and what they're not interested in. It's also a good time for the lead coach and the mentors to start looking into materials and the mat and what's required and start placing orders for them. From September to November, this is when you're going to start creating a weekly schedule of when to meet up and when to start building your robot and working on the project. And early November, early December, or late November, early December, that's when competitions happen. So by then you have to ensure that your robot and project are done.
Okay, so now we're going to go into a little bit more detail about what we expect would be well if you had done for each month. So for March, this is when you should be approaching schools and libraries and talking about them and getting them on board with this whole concept. So the process for actually doing this can run quite differently depending on whether you plan on starting a community team or a school or library team. So for a school or library team, what we recommend is you create a proposal which would include all the different components such as what is FLL, what organization you're part of, why do you want to do this, and you want to include time commitment, like the when and where of these meetings would be held, the finances and the budget plan and the rough outline that you created beforehand should also be included to show them that you've thought about all these aspects. And you want to include what you expect them to contribute in terms of finances, and you want to include backup plans if those finances are not able to be covered. So you can include different things like, if the finances are not able to be covered, we can apply for, we can ask different sponsors, or there's also grants available for FLL teams, especially for first-year teams and second-year teams. There's different grants that you should definitely apply for if your finances are not getting covered. And there's also grants for all-girls teams that you can look into. After you've created this proposal, we recommend that you go and have a meeting or arrange a meeting with the head principal or the librarian, and you sit with them and you talk through the proposal and explain to them what you want to do. After this, ask them if they're able to arrange a meeting with all the adult mentors that are going to be involved and all the youth mentors that you'll be bringing from your team. When this meeting happens, what you want to do is run through everything that is required for the coaches to know about FLL. And you should also go over the finances very thoroughly. So in this meeting, the main focus should be finances to cover all the costs, because that's the main aspect. If the finances aren't able to be covered, then it's going to be very difficult to start the team in the first place. So this meeting that you have with all the adult mentors that you're going to be working with, make sure to go over all the finances. In this meeting, you should also decide the when and where of your meetings are going to be held. So like, how consistently are you going to meet? Are you going to meet more consistently during the build season than off season? And also make sure to establish a form of communication with the lead adult mentor, so that way you can keep in touch and keep everyone updated.
Okay, and if you do choose to mentor a community team, most of the steps are very similar. However, there's a few additional things that you may have to complete. For example, deciding where your primary location may be. So you can ask libraries if they're willing to be a location for the students to work on their FLL project, or even if you're school yourself, if you're a school team, if you guys are interested in helping out the students and allowing them to come to your school after school hours and work with them. This is also a time where you need to discuss finances. Will the kids be the ones who are paying for the finances, or is your team going to provide them with like potential grants, or are you going to look for potential sponsors and grants, things like that? And in order to recruit new members for a community team, it's really important to start creating posters that attract students of a variety of interests. So try not to just promote FLL, as I said before, as just the robot. So include things like the project and core values. The students who may be interested in both can come in and show their interest. Contact local libraries and even local schools if they're willing to put up your posters, and see if that's a good way to start recruiting. And make sure the places that you're putting up these posters are generally in a good place for students, where they're like, let's just say if it's a library nearby where you know that a lot of students come after school, so you're going to be getting more students who are interested. It's also helpful to indicate info session day, whether it be at your school, even a library, where students who are interested can come in and with their parents and get to learn a bit more about FLL. And if their parents are even interested in mentoring a team, that's even better, so they can also get to learn more. And you have to ensure that you update your rough timeline as you go forward, so preparing different lessons and learning about different mechanisms, programming, building, project, things like that. And if there's another adult mentor or a librarian or even your coaches who are involved in this, ensure that you share your project outline with them. And remember that communication is very, very important. So establish, as Brijesh said, establish a good communication platform, whether it be Google Classroom or even Slack, where you can speak with the mentors if you guys are having regular meetings, and you can inform them on everything that's happening.
Okay, so once you've established that form of communication and you've got everyone that's involved on board with creating your FLL team, April should be the month where you focus on your information meeting and getting kids onto your team. So the first meeting in April should be your information meeting. And in this meeting, you're going to be promoting and getting kids interested in the FLL program. But it's also very important to stress the time commitment it takes, because most of the times these kids don't realize that this is a after-school commitment and it's going to take a lot of time out of their day, and they're going to have to be very dedicated to being a part of this team. So after this first meeting, you might have a select number of students that's perfect for your FLL team size, which is 10. 10 is the maximum number of kids that you can have on an FLL team, or you may have a greater number of students. If you do have a greater number of students, we recommend that you do an application process. What we like to do for the application process is have a written form where we give it to them and they write down different activities that they like, what hobbies, different activities they're part of, different hobbies that they like, and we also ask them whether they want to be part of the project part or the robot part. And we try to get an even number of both, so that way we don't run into trouble when we're trying to assign roles to each kid. And then after this, we also do an additional part of the application where we invite the kids in and we ask them, we give them an activity and we assess their collaboration and teamwork skills, because this does become a very big part of the team going into the build season, because you want a group of kids that collaborate very well together and are very dedicated to robotics and FLL as a whole. The rest of the month of April should be spent, after you've created your team, the rest of the month of April should be spent on core values. So that's where the kids, you teach the kids all the core values that there are, and you conduct different activities with them. You get the kids working together very, very well. And this way, going into build season, they'll learn to respect each other. They'll learn to respect each other's opinions, because as from previous experience, we've had the case where we didn't focus on core values very much, and this did lead to conflict during the build season, because some kids thought their opinions weren't valued as much, and there was only a select group of kids actually doing the work, whereas other kids felt excluded. So it's very important that you do go through all the core values during April. It's also very important during the month of April to form, like Mehak said, a classroom or a Slack where you can communicate with the kids and keep them updated on everything that's going to be going on.
Okay, so now on to May and June. So this is when you start thinking of A, the lessons, and B, the administrative stuff. So things like getting up posters, thinking of your team name and a logo for your team. So you can determine this around the theme of the season. So for example, if the theme is water, you can have like water drops or like something like that. You can also, if the students are interested, hand posters to advertise themselves and brand themselves. And registration for the team and sign-ups for competitions registration for the team happens on May 27th. So that's a good time to get your team registered. So May is the prime time to focus on administrative stuff, registration, get that out of the way, and order any materials that you may need. For example, like the mat, the game mat, or Lego parts or EV3s, things like that that your the students from the community or even a school may not have. And this is also a good time to get familiar with the technology. So what we like to do is we like to divide up the students between if they like build, if they're planning on doing build aspect or the project aspect. So build, we get them familiar with different mechanisms. So give them a chance to start working with Lego and motors and sensors, things like that, and start making like mini robots and testing them out. And for students who are focusing on project, have them come up with, so for example, if the theme is already released, have them come up with a topic that's related to that, and like do a bit of research and then present it to you. And then you and like the mentors or coaches can give them feedback and tell them how they can improve for the coming season.
Okay, so August is when the game release happens, and so this is why it's very important during, especially with the school FLL team, to have that form of communication of Slack or Google Classroom, because then you can update the kids that the game has released, and you tell the kids to read through the game manual that's there, and tell them to get familiar with both aspects of the competition. So that's the project and the robot aspect of the competition. And you want to ask each different sub-team to start brainstorming different ideas that they want to use during their actual season. So we assign homework during August. We tell the kids watch the video, read through the game manual, and then we tell the robot subgroup to start sketching down ideas that they want to use for their base. Or there's this software called LDD, which is like a Lego version of CAD. And we tell them to experiment with that and start getting familiar with the different missions that they're going to be working with and throughout the season. And so for project, we also assign the homework of looking at the challenge that they're given. So for example, this year's theme was into orbit, and the challenge that they're given is to come up with a problem that humans face, whether that's social or physical, while on long durations of space travel. So this was released in August, so we told the kids to start looking at different problems that humans do face and start coming up with a topic and maybe even start to research possible solutions. And this will give them a good lead in going into September, because then when September comes around, the kids are ready to go and start building and researching. So the first meeting back from summer break, we review the game with the kids. We go over little bits of the game manual. We make sure that the kids are the kids understand all the aspects there are of the actual competition. And then we have the robot students start picking the 3 main missions that they want. And we think this is a very good number to strive for because there's usually 12 to 13 missions that are released. And sometimes kids think that they have to complete all of them, but this is definitely not the case. And especially for a first-year FLL team, we do recommend that you go for 3 main missions and get very good at completing those missions. For project, we ask that on the first day back, they start looking at problems together as a team, start narrowing down a topic that they want to research about and they're very, very passionate about. So through the month of September, you continue doing this. We do assign homework on the first day back from summer break, where we tell each subgroup to create a doc, and they have to come up with a timeline, right, with all of their different tasks that they want to complete, and this will help them ensure that they get everything done before the competition day. And this is very, very important because it allows the kids to to design their own timeline so that they're able to work around it and get everything done by the time they need to get it done. At the end of the month, what we recommend to have done is for project to have their problem, have started researching about it a lot, start getting very, very in-depth about it and coming up with a solution that they might want to look into. And then for robot, we recommend that they have the base of their robot built and they're starting to look into mechanisms that they want to attach onto their robot.
Okay, and now on to October and November. This is when students are focusing on their subdivisions and their committees of where they're working. So for example, for the build team or the robot team, what they'd be doing is what we like to do is divide them into smaller groups and have each small group focus on one mission and see how they can come up with different mechanisms and what's the most efficient way to attach and detach the mechanism. And for project, we like them to start contacting professionals who know more about the topic. So if they have any questions regarding something that they're researching, they can gain a bit more knowledge about it, and they can use any of the stuff that they like talk to the professional about and apply it into their presentation. It kind of shows as judges that they've gone more than just looking online and actually meeting up with someone. So a way that you can do this is that either through a phone call or even a video call, and if possible, you can go meet the person in person. And in this time, it's also very important to ensure that all students know of what's happening with the team. So although students are divided into build and project, it's important for them to know what's happening at all times. So if judges do come around during the competition, every team member on the team looks like they played an equal role, and they're all fully aware of what's happening. So what we like to do is have the robot or the build team, as they're working, like demonstrate what they've built so far and like where they are in their process and how long it's going to take them to finish. And the project team start practice presenting and show it to the robot team and see if they can get any improvements or anything that they need to work on, just so both sides of the team are equally aware. And also, 1 to 2 weeks before the competition, it's really important to ensure that the robot's built, and what they're practicing detaching and undetaching parts, as well as fine-tuning any stuff with like the program or coding. And for the project aspect, have students practice a lot, and also have coaches and mentors look at the presentation and watch them present and see if they can give them any improvements or any things that they need to work on.
Okay, so now for competition day. So going into competition day, you should ensure that all parts of the FLL team are done, like you've met all the requirements that are needed. And for you to do well on the day of the competition, it's very crucial that you stress to the kids that they need to practice, they need to be informed about all aspects of the team, so make sure they listen and understand what's going on with the team. There's also a time available for extra practice during the competition, so they have practice matches that they can sign up for the robot side of it. So make sure if the kids are behind or they feel like they need to practice a little bit more, that they do go into the competition and sign up for this, because the spots do get filled up very fast. Your role as a youth mentor there, or a mentor at all, should be to make sure that the kids are encouraged and although even if they are doing poorly or they're not doing as well as they expected to do, make sure that they're still looking at other robots, looking at ways to improve their robot, and going around to different teams, seeing their projects, seeing what kind of things they researched, because the topic that's released, the theme is very, very wide, so there's multiple things that can be done research on, and so then if they look around, they can see different things, get inspired, and yeah, so make sure to keep encouraging the kids. It has to be a positive day. Don't even if the kids are doing badly, like for us, one of our first FLL teams, they had a late start, so they weren't able to get as many things done as they expected to, but on the day of the competition, all the kids were still cheering them on, and it's very nice to look at that as a mentor and see that, so make sure you're always encouraging them.
And now, once your first competition is completed, we recommend that you have a reflection day where you meet up with the team once again and discuss how everything went. So this is a good time to look over the rubrics that the judges have given back and see if there's any improvements that you guys can focus on next year if you do move on forward to the next step. And also, it's a good time to ask students how they think everything went. Did they like FLL? Is it something that interested them? And how do they like the competition? And if there's any things that you as a mentor can improve. And something else we recommend is having a celebration, because of all the effort and hard work that they put in. Pizza day with them, and we just give them pizza and like hang out, and it's kind of a good time to like relax and reflect on how the season went. And if you do progress further into the competition, this is a good time to start thinking of improvements and any way that you can make your robot better. Okay, so now we're gonna do a scenario/activity. So Binal and Keerat, do you guys want to conduct that?
Yeah, sure. So, this is like a really quick kind of scenario, and then we were just wondering what you would do in this scenario. So, our first scenario is you and your team are three weeks into build season. You've gathered the project division of your FL team to discuss their progress in finding a project question and solution, you find that they've come up with what seems to be a great idea for a question, and that they've begun researching this further to come up with a solution. However, their research consists of information from the internet practically copied and pasted from the internet, and you're concerned that the team doesn't have a real understanding of their project, of their own project research. How do you approach this issue and then help the team to better understand their own research? So what would you do in this scenario when they've kind of plagiarized and they don't understand what's going on with the project?
Also, how could you prevent this from happening? So from the beginning of build season. So
We can give you guys a few minutes to, if you already have an answer, that's good too.
Well, I mean, I just probably ask them questions about what their thing is, like not completely related to everything they've written down, so that because if they do have an understanding of what they've researched, then they probably know a little bit more than what they've just written down.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Would encourage them to reach out to people that they know, either from parents of the kids that go to the school that work in the industry or work closely related, and get input from them.
Mm-hmm. I think that another important factor would be to stress to them why it's important and why they should care, and then have them relate to like their own lives, like not something like for example, space is really cool and all, but what does learning about STEM and space do for them? I think that's really important for them to know and understand. Then what do you think about preventing this from happening? How do you prevent it from happening?
I mean, just have like constant checks with them, like just check in every few days to make sure they know what they're doing and how they're on track.
yeah, so that's what we like to do. We check in with them, we read over their work, and we make sure that like it sounds like it's from them. And because it's pretty easy to tell whether it's written by a fifth grader or it's from the internet. So
And also, if you are in a scenario where there is plagiarism happening, it's a good way to have a roundtable discussion and discuss with the students and have them present the research that they came up with in their own words, so it's not plagiarized, and they're understanding what they've copied and pasted from the internet. They're understanding it. They're gonna gain more than rather just reading off a sheet of paper.
And one more thing. So while they're researching, it does take a while, and so they might get bored. And so it's your job as a mentor to keep them interested and keep them engaged. And so be very enthusiastic about the research. Ask them questions constantly, and then ask them if they think this is cool or not, and then how they can apply this to their own lives, or maybe it correlates with their interests in the future and stuff like that. Our next scenario would be. What are we doing?
Sure. On the first day of school, you have a huge turnout with many kids eager to join the team. But then when you go to split up the team and assign each student's role, whether that be project or robot, you realize that the large majority of the students really want to do the robot part. However, you need to split the teams up evenly so that equal effort goes to both project and robot. What do you do?
This is a problem that you will most likely face. It's very common because
we face it every single year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is why we stress at the beginning that it's very important that you when promoting the team, that you do stress that there's a project aspect of it too, and you do need a lot of people there for project, and it's a lot of research. Yeah.
And it's just as important, if not like It's just as important.
It requires a lot of hard work too, like after school hours too, a lot more than robot.
So what would you do?
I mean, you could go in shifts. So like the people who are working on the robot, they work on the robot, but then they have to like switch out and work on the project for a little while, so the project people can have robot time as well.
Yeah. We also did this year where we sat down for 2 meetings or so, and we just looked at different problems and stuff and got the kids interested in the project aspect. We didn't look at robot for a while, and we just talked about project to see different, and then a lot of kids' interests were like piqued, and they were like, oh, like I'm really interested in this, and this like helped us, so more kids wanted to do project instead of robot then.
Did you have something to add?
No.
Okay, that's great. Our third scenario would be members of your robot group are nearly finished the base of the bot, and they need to add a few finishing touches to make it ready. However, some other kids on robot have finished creating the first attachment to solve the missions. This leads to a dispute between the two halves of the group who gets to work on the robot. So what would you do? So one side of the build team wants to finish the base, and the other side wants to get on with the attachments. And now there's conflict with what's more important or what needs to get done first.
Well, if you have extra Lego, you could build like another model of the robots. The attachment group can start working on that, and the base group can still finish their base.
That's a good idea.
Anyone else? Okay, so what our team usually does for this is prior to determining the students who will be on the project aspect, the robot aspect, what we like to do is set group leaders. They're not necessarily like leading the group, however, they're just looking out for any conflicts or determining that everyone's on the same page, so you can avoid this issue from happening and ensuring that each member is working equally and there's one person just overlooking it. So if like the mentors or even like yourself or the coaches don't have time to look into what's happening, the group leaders do, and they can report anything that's going wrong.
And our fourth scenario would be,
So your project group has been created and the kids look like they're off to a good start. As you start working with the kids, you realize that the majority of the students are not giving it their all, and they either end up fooling around or producing rushed work. The time's ticking, and you need to get these kids to start getting serious about meeting deadlines. What do you do?
another problem that we've had.
Just
Yeah.
constantly
Yeah. Because the project kids do work on computers a lot, and that's a very easy, like it's an easy source of distraction where they just open up a new tab, start playing games, watching random videos, and you don't want this, especially because your time is very valuable with them. You want them to be putting their all into this research. So what would you do in this situation?
I mean, I guess you can make it more interesting than research so that they're not as like going on.
Yeah. And again, this is very important. This is where you should really stress the importance of the project portion, because the kids will get bored on like just by researching for hours like every week for weeks and weeks. And so I think it's really important just so like they know that the project is very important, and then this research will just make their project even better.
And it's also very important, that's why, to create a model, because once you found your problem and you're researching about it and you've come up with a solution or you've expanded on a previous solution, you want the students to be hands-on. So it's a very good idea to have them build a model, and the judges will love this as they love visual representations.
And also constantly make sure that they're updating you on what's happening. So sometimes if you leave the students alone for a long time or a long period of time, they can kind of get distracted and not complete as much work. However, if you're constantly having discussions with the group and seeing where they can improve, this is a good way for them to know what the next steps are and not just feel like they're done or there's nothing else that they can do.
And like discussing with them will also evolve their interest into the problem, because because you can ask them questions and then they'll be responding in their opinions, and they can like evolve their opinion again, and then their interest, and they can like think of other solutions and maybe research them further after this discussion.
And to add on, that's a really good way to get them prepared for the presentation that they will be doing in front of the judges, because if you are asking them questions, they'll be more prepared to answer them when the judges do. So they'll gain a deeper understanding of what research they've done, as well, so they can answer the questions correctly, as well as see where they can improve.
Also, really quickly, at the end of each week, like Mehak mentioned before, we like to have the project present to the robot and the robot present to the project. And this is very important because judges will ask anyone questions in the room. And so it's very important that you make sure that both aspects of the team are familiar and know what's going on.
And our final scenario was as part of preparation for the core values aspect of the competition, you decide to host some team building exercises to get the kids collaborating. While playing these games, some kids start to fool around and take the exercises as a joke and complain, saying they want to work on their robot or programming. What would you do?
This does happen a lot because once the students get into building the robot and researching, they really want to do that instead of do these activities that we designed for them. But it's very important that they do these activities. When they go into the judging room, the judges will be looking at their collaboration and teamwork skills, and so it's good to give them sample activities and see how they work together, give them tips and tricks to improve.
What would you do in this scenario?
Anyone?
Well, middle schoolers are kind of immature, especially like if they've been part of the team and they know or they think that they're better than everybody else. So I think the group leaders would have an effect on it, because the group leaders we choose are usually not biased, and so they hold value in both project and build. And one of our group leaders is actually doing project this year because there weren't enough people, and then he was very mature about it too, and he's doing really well in that. And then again, when we advertise, again, just like make sure that we try to get people that are both interested in build and project, and there's an equal amount of interest, because that's going to just like cause even more conflicts in the future if everybody wants to do build. And that's it.
Yes.
So do you have any questions?